Have you ever stood in a room full of people so sure of their judgments, only to watch those certainties crumble in an instant? That was the moment Lucas Hayes had been waiting for, and it was almost here. The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of Willow Creek Chapel, casting soft gold and ruby hues across the aisle. Lucas stood at the altar, his hands still, not out of calm, but because his decision had long been made. He wasn't the kind of man to tremble under pressure, and today was no exception. From the back rows, whispers floated like venom. Evelyn's relatives, dressed to perfection in crisp suits and diamond earrings, huddled together, trading sharp comments behind painted-on smiles. One uncle, his voice dipped in mockery, muttered just loud enough for Lucas to hear, "A mechanic? That's the best she could do?" Thought she'd reach a little higher. The laughter that followed wasn't subtle. It rang out sharp and clear, slicing through the quiet air. Lucas heard every word, but he stood rooted, patient. What no one in that room realized was that the vows he was about to speak weren't just about love. They would flip the entire day on its head. Lucas Hayes had never owned a tailored suit until Evelyn dragged him into one for their engagement shoot. Appearances weren't his style. He was built for grit, not glamour. Born and raised in the working-class district of Millstone Ridge, Lucas was the product of long shifts, humble meals, and a mother who taught him that pride didn't come from wealth, but from the work you put in. The smell of motor oil and the sound of socket wrenches were his earliest comforts. By the time he was 24, Lucas wasn't just fixing engines. He was running the most trusted garage in the neighborhood. People didn't just bring their cars, they brought their faith in him. And then Evelyn Whitmore walked into his world. She wasn't just out of reach. She was from another orbit entirely. Sharp heels clicking on concrete, oversized sunglasses hiding eyes trained to spot weakness, and a busted luxury SUV in desperate need of attention. Lucas thought she'd vanish the moment her car was fixed, but she didn't. She stayed. She asked about him, not just the repairs. She came back, for conversation, for connection. Evelyn was the daughter of Charles Whitmore, a man whose name was etched into the skyline on office towers and real estate empires. Her world was one of champagne brunches, silent auctions, and last names that opened doors. A world where men like Lucas were invisible, meant to serve, not belong. When she introduced Lucas to her family, the verdict was delivered before dessert. Her father's handshake was cold and dismissive. Her mother's smile, thin and rehearsed. And her brother Nathan sealed it with the loudest insult of all. So what's the plan? Fix her flat tires and call it a lifetime achievement. Lucas had heard worse. Wealth didn't scare him, but that didn't make their words any less sharp, especially when he saw the way Evelyn bit her tongue to defend him, again and again. The closer the wedding came, the heavier her family's disapproval grew. Their conversations laced with polite sabotage, their toasts wrapped in warnings, their questions thinly veiled attempts to make her second-guess everything. Every look, every whisper, every joke landed like small stones in Lucas's gut. But he didn't push back. Not then. Evelyn had been fighting for the both of them. Because Lucas Hayes wasn't just a mechanic. He had been building something bigger, and his vows would reveal a truth none of them were ready for. The night before the wedding, the Whitmores hosted a rehearsal dinner at their grand Bellevue Manor, a sprawling estate where the hedges were trimmed more often than most people wash their cars. The guest list was pure elite, financiers, politicians, socialites, the kind of people who looked at Lucas like a lost delivery driver. Lucas showed up in the suit Evelyn picked, hands resting easy on the tablecloth. His callous palms, though softened by time, were still a badge of his journey. Around him, the chatter circled like a storm, but the words weren't meant for him. One cousin raised a glass with a crooked grin. Here's to Evelyn. At least, if the honeymoon car breaks down, she's got her own mechanic. Laughter erupted, sharp and deliberate that Evelyn's smile stiffened, but Lucas only grinned. Not the grin of a man defeated, but the quiet smile of someone holding an ace. Because what no one in that room knew was that this mechanic had more than vows prepared. The air felt thicker as the evening wore on. The dinner seemed to stretch out endlessly, filled with forced pleasantries, hollow conversations, and superficial charm. Lucas could see the disapproval in Evelyn's eyes, the way her fingers twitched under the table, desperately wanting to reach for him, to tell him everything would be okay. But she couldn't. Not yet. The night dragged on, until finally, The last glass was emptied, and the last note of laughter faded into the grand, empty halls of the estate. Lucas and Evelyn stood on the grand staircase, their hands clasped, her face pale from the weight of the evening's glances. "I can't take this anymore, Lucas," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't stand watching you suffer like this." Lucas squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. "We'll get through this, Evelyn. You and me. Just trust me." And with that, he pulled away, making his way to the guest suite. The weight of what he was about to do sat heavy on his chest. He had been planning this for weeks, working in silence, not letting a single word slip. Tonight would change everything. As the final guests trickled out of the estate, Lucas returned to the chapel where the ceremony would take place. The air inside was cold, the stone floors echoing with the sound of his footsteps. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was no turning back now. The vows were waiting. And so was the truth. Willow Creek Chapel was aglow with the soft light of candles, their flickering flames casting long shadows across the polished pews. The air was thick with anticipation, but Lucas Hayes felt a strange calmness settle over him. He stood at the altar, his palms sweating in the sleeves of the perfectly tailored suit Evelyn had insisted he wear. He wasn't used to this world, the world of extravagant gowns and guests who belonged in places he could only dream of. But Evelyn had insisted on this, and for her, Lucas would do anything. The soft hum of murmurs echoed throughout the chapel, the soft music from the organ providing a delicate backdrop. He looked down at the floor, his thoughts racing. The morning had come too quickly. He had been prepared to face the ceremony, but as he looked out at the sea of faces, he realized he wasn't just marrying Evelyn today. He was marrying into her world, a world that had never fully accepted him. He could feel the weight of that truth pressing against his chest. When he had first met Evelyn, she had walked into his garage in Millstone Ridge with a busted-up luxury car. She had come from a world far removed from his own, a world of wealth and power where men like Lucas were invisible. Her family's legacy was built on businesses he would never understand, her father's name etched into the sky above skyscrapers. Her brother Nathan's cold glares were still fresh in his memory. And Charles Whitmore, Evelyn's father, hadn't been subtle about his opinion on their relationship. "You're a mechanic, Lucas," he had said to him, the words sharp and cutting. "You know that's not good enough for my daughter, right?" But Evelyn hadn't let that stop her. She fought for them every step of the way, standing up to her family, risking everything for the man who had spent his life under the hood of cars, fixing engines and repairing dreams. He never understood why she had chosen him, why she had stayed, but she had. And for that, he was forever grateful. As the moment of the vows approached, Evelyn's soft footsteps echoed from behind, signaling her arrival. Lucas turned, his breath catching as she appeared at the entrance of the chapel, her white gown flowing behind her like a dream. She was perfect, every inch of her glowing with a beauty that took his breath away. She walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on his, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. But there was something in her gaze that made him nervous. Something he couldn't place. Had she already sensed what he was about to do? The ceremony was beautiful. Every word spoken by the priest felt like a promise, a contract between two hearts. But Lucas knew the truth. He wasn't just here to say vows. He was here to confess the one thing he had kept hidden from Evelyn, the thing that could shatter everything. As they reached the altar, Lucas took Evelyn's hands in his. The guests looked on, their eyes fixed on the couple, waiting for the moment of perfection. But Lucas felt nothing but the weight of the truth pressing against him. "I have to tell you something," Lucas whispered, his voice shaking. That Evelyn's smile faltered, her eyes searching his face. "What is it?" "I've been hiding something," Lucas continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Before I met you, I was involved in something that wasn't clean. I made choices I regret, and your family knows. They've always known." The words hung in the air like a bitter wind, and for a moment, the chapel seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn's face went pale, her grip tightening around his hands. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Lucas hesitated, struggling to find the right words. "I was involved with people, dangerous people. I thought I could escape them when I came here, when I started my garage in Millstone Ridge. But your family, they've known about my past. Your father warned me before the rehearsal dinner, said if I truly cared about you, I'd walk away. Evelyn took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. My father, he knew. Lucas nodded. He didn't want me here. He never did. He saw me for what I was before you did. The silence between them stretched long and painful. And for the first time in their relationship, Lucas could see the doubt in Evelyn's eyes. She pulled her hand from his, stepping back as if the very touch of him was now too much to bear. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered, her voice breaking. Why didn't you say something before? I was trying to protect you, Lucas said, his throat tight. I thought that if I left the past behind, I could build something with you, something clean. But I was wrong. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. I've lied by omission, and you deserve better than that, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I don't know what to believe anymore, she said, her voice barely audible. This isn't what I imagined. I wanted a future with you, Lucas, but now I don't know if I can trust you. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had been prepared for anger, for disbelief, but hearing the uncertainty in her voice felt like a knife to his heart. Before he could speak again, Evelyn turned, her face pale, as she walked toward the exit of the chapel. Lucas stood frozen, watching her go, his heart shattering with every step she took. Behind him, he heard the rustle of fabric as Charles Whitmore approached. His presence loomed over Lucas like a shadow, his voice low. His presence loomed over Lucas like a shadow, his voice low and full of menace. I warned you, Charles said quietly. You should have walked away when I told you to. Lucas turned, meeting his gaze. I thought I could change. I thought I could prove myself. Charles snorted. It's too late for that. With one final disdainful glance, Charles Whitmore turned and walked away, leaving Lucas standing at the altar, the weight of his past pressing down on him harder than ever.